Ready to roll.
Good evening, everyone. This is Jonathan Cap with the International DT Skyway Sleeper.
Turn left.
We're going to start with Arizona tonight. And after, so I got to look for traffic in this street, and there's a lot of cars at the midnight, and including trucks, so in the rain, so let's go get these recyclable materials for
keep left and then turn left.
Albrook and
turn left
and let's get going.
Here we are, safe and sound. Let's do this.
This programming is sponsored by Carr, Riggs & Ingram, CPAs and Advisors, a top 25 nationally ranked full-service accounting and advisory firm, offering tax, audit, accounting, consulting, and advisory services. Learn more at cricpa.com.
Well, and one of the ways I quite like to deal with that sometimes is just to sort of focus on better times coming. Just that actively believing that is it's kind of like a protest, and the floating parade is an image of that. I literally sort of imagine this cloud and people just partying on top of it, and it was everything was good. And so when everything's all murky downstairs, you're just looking up there and it gets you trudging through it day by day, and you don't get too down. And the pots don't melt specifically is the image is clay. Clay doesn't melt, so it doesn't matter how hot it gets, it stays strong. And we're supposed to be if the temperature around us in life is flipping difficult, you're we don't melt, but that's just not true. It's just toxic to think like that. And then the English one is to stiff up a lip, but pots don't melt sounds way better. That sounds more like a Bill Withers song.
Turn left.
Well, Michael Kiwanuka, is there a track you'd like us to go out on?
Yeah, there is. I really, really love the title track. It was the first song in the studio that made me feel right, we're making a record. It got me really excited about the album. It was sort of the first thing I made. And I've always sort of wanted to write a song like that as well. So I think it's really beautiful. So I'd love people to hear it.
It's such a wistful song. It's it's hopeful, but it's not starry-eyed, idealistic, unrealistic, hopeful. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And that's I was trying to make the whole album I don't want it to be depressing, but I also don't want it to be fake. Everything's great, because it isn't. but it's worth going for it, you know? It's worth having that hope anyway. There is always light in the tunnel. You just got to like go for it, believe in it.
Well, Michael Kiwanuka, congratulations on your new album, Small Changes, and thank you for talking with us about it.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Keep left. Turn left.
You're listening to All Things Considered
Turn
from NPR News. Support for NPR comes from this station and from C3 AI. C3 Generative AI works to enable rapid access to hallucination-free insights from enterprise systems using any LLM, helping turn the invisible into the obvious. This is Enterprise AI. From Total Wine and more for discovering something new, like a Chardonnay, sparkling wine, or tequila. Learn more at TotalWine.com. Spirits not sold in Virginia and North Carolina. Available to adults 21 or older. From the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, its Secure Our World program is aimed at encouraging people to use strong passwords and a password manager. CISA.gov/SecureOurWorld. And from the Doris Duke Foundation.
We're a minute away from 6 on a Tuesday evening here on your NPR station, News 88.7. On the Grand Parkway southbound 99, the wreck at 529 now blocking both main lanes. Traffic squeezing by on the right shoulder. It had been diverted off for a while, but now they're not forcing you off at least. Either way, you're jammed up from around 290. Northbound 45 heading out North Freeway, a wreck at Rankin just cleared from the left lane a couple of minutes ago. And on the South Loop 610 eastbound, up to a 35-minute trip to get from Fannin to 225. We had an earlier wreck at I-45. Between now and sunrise at 7:02, it'll be mostly cloudy, lows in the mid-50s. Showers likely from midday through the evening tomorrow, and high 71. By now it's 62 here at the UH campus, and this is your NPR station, KUHF Houston News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston at 6 o'clock.
Electricity, services, they want the currency to be better for them. They want to live.
A journalist inside Aleppo, Syria, tells us what people there want now that rebel fighters have seized control of their city.
For Tuesday, December 3rd, this is All Things Considered.
I'm Mary Louise Kelly.
And I'm Elsa Chang. Ahead this hour, the pandemic helped make people in China painfully aware of inequality in their society.
They start to view the society as less fair.
But our correspondent Emily Fang has been tracking optimism in China.
Also, how might the gene editing technique called CRISPR help people with extremely rare genetic disorders?
We're building a set of recipes and approaches for how to switch from one disease to another.
And Hollywood set a holiday record over Thanksgiving in ticket sales.
Our critic Bob Mondello has questions.
That's ahead. First, the news.
Exit right.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Spear. The Trump transition and the U.S. Justice Department have signed an agreement that will begin the process of background checks and security clearances for the incoming administration. NPR's Tamara Keith reports it had been delayed.
President-elect Trump hasn't been shy about expressing his distrust of the Justice Department and FBI, but they play a key role in the transition from one administration to the next, conducting background checks and processing security clearances for intended nominees and the transition officials who will go into agencies before the inauguration to get ready. This agreement allows the transition to begin submitting names. In a statement, Susie Wiles, who will be White House Chief of Staff, said this agreement will ensure President-elect Trump and his team will be ready on day one to begin enacting the America First agenda. Tamara Keith, NPR News, West Palm Beach, Florida.
The number of people with unaffordable housing costs has reached yet another record high. NPR's Jennifer Ludd reports both renters and homeowners are struggling as prices continue to spike.
Nearly 43 million households paid more than a third of their income for housing last year, and for about half of them, it was more than 50%. That's according to an analysis of new census data by Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Studies. Renters are far more likely to struggle. But the biggest uptick was actually among homeowners. Harvard researchers say a growing number of older people have retired or cut back on work, lowering their income just as housing costs have spiked. And even if they've paid off a mortgage, insurance and property taxes have also shot up. Since 2019, Harvard finds that housing costs have risen faster than wages for both renters and owners. Jennifer Levin, NPR News, Washington.
The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is proposing a new rule to better protect Americans' financial data from scammers. From NPR's Laurel Walmsley.
For more than 50 years, the Fair Credit Reporting Act has protected consumer privacy by restricting how consumer reporting agencies can use personal information. But a growing industry of data brokers has avoided compliance with that law, even as they collect and sell enormous troves of sensitive financial data. Now the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is proposing a rule that would ensure financial data brokers comply with that law. CFPB Director Rohit Chopra says the rule will help protect Americans' personal information.
Often our adversaries don't need to hack anything. Data brokers are making this data available to anyone willing to pay a price.
It's not known whether the incoming Trump administration will support the rule. Laurel Walmsley, NPR News, Washington.
A mostly quiet trading day on Wall Street, with blue chips again losing ground, even as the NASDAQ and the broader market continued to hit new highs. The Dow fell 76 points. The NASDAQ also was down 76 points. The S&P was up 2 points. This is it.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gail DeWalter. A new study says a tax investment strategy that's supposed to create growth in Houston's distressed neighborhoods is mostly benefiting wealthy areas. News 88.7's Dominic Anthony Walsh is looking at the report from Rice University's Baker Institute.
Tax increment reinvestment zones are supposed to spur private development in low-growth areas by funding public projects with extra revenue. But Uptown and Midtown, the two highest spending TERSs, respectively spent nearly $900 million and more than $500 million, while having area median incomes of $100,000 or more. John Diamond led the report.
Clearly, we're spending more on higher income areas than we are on lower income areas in terms of tiers-funded projects. It's just that simple.
Diamond says City Council could consider allowing less affluent areas to keep the full benefits of the increased TERS revenues while taking more from the very affluent zones. I'm Dominic Anthony Walsh, News 88.7.
There's a good chance you'll still have to take your car in for inspection despite a new law that goes into effect in the new year. News 88.7's Gwyneth Mosbeck reports.
Residents of Harris, Montgomery, Fort Bend, Brazoria, and Galveston counties will still need to pay for vehicle emissions testing this year, despite a new law that will eliminate mandatory safety inspections for non-commercial vehicles starting January 1st. Doug Shute, the AAA spokesperson for Houston, is encouraging drivers to keep up with vehicle maintenance.
AAA Texas and the Department of Public Safety want to remind Texans to regularly service their vehicles to keep themselves and other motorists safe on the road.
The old safety inspection fee will now be collected as a $7.50 inspection program replacement fee when you register your car with the Department of Motor Vehicles. I'm Gwyneth Mosbeck, News 88.7.
The Rockets play the Kings in Sacramento tonight. Tip-off is at 9 o'clock. Cloudy tonight, overnight low near 56. We'll have cloudy skies on Wednesday. Chance of rain up to 80%. High should be around 70. I'm Gail DeLauder, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Indeed, designed to be an end-to-end hiring solution for businesses of all sizes to attract, interview, and hire candidates, all from one platform. Learn more at Indeed.com/NPR.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Elsa Chang in Culver City, California.
And I'm Ari Shapiro in Washington. Syria has been at war for more than a decade, and that conflict between the government of Bashar al-Assad and opposition forces has been at a stalemate for years. All of that changed late last week when opposition forces launched a surprise offensive sweeping into the country's second largest city, Aleppo. Freelance journalist Sarah Qasim used the opportunity to enter the city for the first time since the start of the war in 2011. She staunchly opposes the Assad regime, and she is here to tell us about what she has been seeing in Aleppo. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Tell us about the scene when you arrived in the city a couple days ago. What were the scenes?
Yes, once I entered, I've seen people walking in the streets as normal without any scenes of war or without any scenes of blood, without any scenes of violence. They are buying bread, buying in the shops, in the markets, buying vegetables, as they are doing their routine, their daily routine. Some people were just walking in the streets. They seemed to me very happy, so I asked and interviewed some of them. They were returning back home. Some displaced people, they came to Aleppo from the northwest of Syria. They visited Aleppo after being under the control of the military operations. They could manage to go to Aleppo and to go and to look for their houses because they are displaced for more than maybe 6 years, and now they are able, yes, to go there.
You know, when you describe people who are buying bread or vegetables at the market like a normal day, even as it's just been this massive offensive by the rebels and counterstrikes by the Assad regime and Russia, are people going about their daily lives because they're so desensitized to war? Or explain how they can just do their regular errands in the midst of this conflict?
I was shocked, to be honest. In the first moment, I was shocked. So how those people are living normally? What I've witnessed in Aleppo city, people were kind of shocked, not knowing what's happening. I've asked so many people, how come that you are in the streets, you're not afraid from the attacks? They said, okay, we have to live, we have to buy bread, we have to buy vegetables. But also they are not following so much the news to know that Assad forces are so much withdrawing from the city, and it's totally out of their control. Maybe they are not well aware of what happened till this moment. And in the meantime, I've seen people who are very happy. They have been in Aleppo, they've never left Aleppo, and they are very happy because opposition entered the city. They said that they suffered a lot because the economic situation was dire there.
When you talk to bakers or students or taxi drivers, what do they tell you they want right now? What is most important to them in their lives?
Electricity, services. They want the economic situation to be different. They want to live. And some of them, even I met men, they are around 46 or 47 years old. So they've asked us whether maybe the opposition will take them to service or to the army, because we know that the Syrian regime, still to this moment, they take to service men who even are above 40. So they told us that they are always afraid. They stay at home. They could not walk in the streets normally in the city because they have wives and children to take care of.
You described people returning home to Aleppo who had been displaced many years ago. Did you see any of them come back to their house for the first time in years? I'm wondering what that experience must have been like for them.
Yes, it was a kind of not able to explain it because it was unbelievable, because they've never thought that there would come a day that they will visit their house once again. They lost hope. They lost hope in the past because they knew how much it is difficult to return back home. They don't have the courage to go to the areas under the control of the Assad regime forces. And in the meantime, nothing is changing on the political situation on a large scale.
The war has caused so much destruction and death. After years of stalemate, do you believe this resumption of fighting can actually lead to a positive outcome and not just more cycles of killing?
I really hope so. I really hope so, because I've seen till this moment so many people, hundreds of people, happy to return back home. They are happy to return back to their villages. We have tens of villages in the countryside of Aleppo and Aleppo city. Thousands of people, really hundreds of thousands of people will return back home. So the situation will be so much different for those people, especially people who are living in the camps in the northwest of Syria. We know that the NGOs cannot offer the people who are displaced in the camps what they need.
Sarah Qasim is a Syrian journalist speaking with us from the city of Aleppo. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
As China went through decades of explosive growth, it used to be common for people to make it big, seemingly overnight. But now the economy is sagging, social inequality is widening, and perceptions are fading. People's lives in China can only improve. NPR's Emily Feng brings us this report.
Xinrui Ding grew up the daughter of hard-working migrant workers in China with dreams of making it in the big city, Beijing.
They want to bring me to a bigger place to give me more education resource.
And they achieved their modest goals.
They don't have to worry about daily life, and they have enough more money allow me to go to the States for university.
But when Ding herself contemplated her professional opportunities during the COVID pandemic, she decided to stay in the U.S., then the Cayman Islands when her U.S. work visa ran out. She's now a global migrant, she jokes, just as her parents were migrant workers at home. Yet she realizes now, despite her parents' migrant status in China, that she grew up with privilege in Beijing.
Back then, China was just growing at a very fast speed. You just have to get into a big city. Whichever career you choose, you will succeed in the end.
Young people who can make it into one of China's first-tier cities still have lots of opportunities, Ding says. The problem is she thinks the barriers are too high now for those without family wealth.
You know the economy is bad. Every day you might just get laid off, and then you still have to pay that much high rent.
Martin K. White, a professor emeritus of sociology at Harvard University, studies how people in China view privilege and opportunity. And for the past 20 years, he and teams of scholars in the US and China have been doing regular surveys of thousands of people.
One of these questions we asked regularly in these surveys is, compared to 5 years ago, how is your family's economic situation today? And, very large majorities of Chinese said they were better off or much better off.
Ren Mu, who teaches international affairs at Texas A&M University, saw those studies and thought,
Chinese people are probably the most optimistic people in the world.
Optimistic, even though wealth inequality in China was rising fast. But China had a very high tolerance for inequality.
As long as they believe that they can advance economically in absolute terms, they don't really care about inequality.
Over the past decade, this has changed dramatically. Last year, White and colleagues in the US and China did 3 new rounds of their survey across a total of more than 32,000 people, with a focus on this research question.
How do you explain why some people are rich and why some people are poor?
White's team found in 3 previous studies that people in China had a strong belief, even more than in the US, that hard work and individual merit paid off. This time, when they asked the same question, is hard work always rewarded?
It goes down from average 61.6% down to 28%. And the percentage of Chinese in the new survey who disagreed with hard work always being rewarded was 31.3%.
That's a big change. Ren Mu at Texas A&M did a study that found growing awareness of long-existing inequality made people more pessimistic as well.
They start to view the society as less fair. Instead, they emphasize more on family background and connection.
Mu thinks 3 years of a global COVID pandemic that exacerbated China's already severe inequality helped make people painfully aware of it. And Chinese leaders are almost certainly paying attention. They got away with a lot when the economy was booming. But absent that, their citizens may demand more of them. Emily Feng, NPR News.
Hundreds of turtles found themselves in cold cold water in Cape Cod, so cold that they had to be rescued and nursed back to health. Tune back into our show tomorrow to visit the facility helping the sea turtles. Just turn on your radio or ask your smart speaker to play NPR for a turtly awesome story.
And to be more specific, you can tell your smart speaker to play Houston Public Media News 88.7 for Morning Edition 5 to 9 in the morning, of course. And for All Things Considered, starting at 3 o'clock every weekday afternoon, Saturday and Sundays at 4. At 6:18, 62 Fahrenheit, 17 Celsius right now here at the UH campus. I'm Dave Pittman. Out on the freeways, our newest problem is heading in on the Gulf Freeway, northbound 45, wreck at Dixie Farm, blocking a couple of right lanes there. You're in for a brief slowdown from around 2351. And on the Grand Parkway, southbound 99, the wreck at 529 is gone, though it will take a while to fully unwind from 290.
PBS NewsHour.
Now more than ever, you need news you can trust. For nearly 50 years, millions have turned to PBS NewsHour for the solid, reliable reporting that has made NewsHour the most objective and credible news program on television. Unbiased, in-depth news that delivers substance over sensationalism. Elections, conflict, climate. Trust a news source that cuts through the noise with news that matters. Fair, thoughtful coverage of the events that impact our lives.
PBS NewsHour, weeknights at 6 on Houston Public Media TV 8.
As more and more people buy electric vehicles, they are also looking for places to charge them.
I won't be surprised if within the next decade or so, something like half of the vehicles out there are going to need access to charging of some type.
I'm Kai Rizdal, the challenges of EV charging when you don't own a home and a charger. That's next time on Marketplace.
That's coming your way in 10 minutes, followed by the Daily at 7 o'clock.
Support comes from Scan Health Plan, a not-for-profit Medicare Advantage plan founded by seniors for seniors that reinvests profits towards improving the quality of care and support for their members. More at scanhealthplan.com. Support comes from Alley Theater, presenting a holiday comedy for adults, The Night Shift Before Christmas, following Margot on her Christmas Eve shift, braving drive-through customers and her own ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. December 5th through 29th, alleytheater.org.
On the Grand Parkway, got a newer problem. This is on the northern section, eastbound direction, right after 249, a wreck in the left lane. It's All Things Considered, and it's 6:20.
Support for NPR comes from the station and from BritBox, dedicated to helping people unbox a world of British TV. With series starring Olivia Colman, Idris Elba, Sophie Turner, Matthew McFadden, and more. Streaming at BritBox.com/NPR. From Indeed, designed to be an end-to-end hiring solution for businesses of all sizes to attract, interview, and hire candidates all from one platform. Learn more at Indeed.com/NPR. And from the listeners who support this NPR station.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Elsa Chang.
And I'm Mary Louise Kelly. The gene editing technique called CRISPR has started to revolutionize medicine. But for people born with one of thousands of very rare genetic disorders, the era of CRISPR is bittersweet. That is because their disorders are too rare to attract drug companies to develop a CRISPR cure for them. NPR health correspondent Rob Stein has the story of some researchers trying to change that.
Lucy Landman was born with a very rare genetic disorder. It causes severe intellectual disability, weak muscles, often seizures, sometimes autism. Lucy's now 3. Her mom's name is Jerry.
She's expected to, very much never be able to live independently, likely never be potty trained, likely never speak. Lucy walks like she's drunk most of the time. It's hard to watch your child suffer. And Lucy does, some days, suffer a lot.
There's only a handful of kids in the world with Lucy's disorder. It's called PGAP3-CDG, and currently there's no way to treat it. In principle, CRISPR, which enables scientists to easily make very precise changes in genes, could be a godsend for Lucy. CRISPR can edit the pairs of genetic letters or bases that make up DNA.
We're lucky that both of her mutations, the one that she gets from me and the one that she gets from my husband, are what we call base editable, right? You can use CRISPR to kind of cut out the wrong base pair and put back in the right one. and that we live in 2024 when that's a legitimate possibility.
But Landman, who is also a pediatrician who lives outside San Francisco, says the disorder affects too few people to attract the millions of dollars necessary to find out.
When Lucy was diagnosed, I asked a bunch of my kind of basic science friends, who work at Genentech and all these other big companies in the Bay Area, and I said, who's kind of working on, can't we just CRISPR this? This seems like it's so feasible. And they were like, I don't know if anyone at all. It's like, no one's working on this yet, Jerry.
But then one day, Landman bumped into a guy at a farmer's market where she was trying to raise money for a foundation she started to try to change that. His name was Fyodor Urnov. Urnov works at the University of California, Berkeley, with Jennifer Doudna, who shared a Nobel Prize for helping discover CRISPR. Urnov knows CRISPR is already changing the lives of some patients with genetic disorders, but he's trying to help kids suffering from much rarer conditions.
The for-profit sector is focusing on conditions such as sickle cell disease, such as cancer, which are commercially viable because there's just enough people with them. And that leaves, frankly, 99.5% of folks outside of the big building that says, come here, be healed by CRISPR. Because the commercial viability is not there, even though the technical feasibility is right in our hands.
So Urnov and scientists at other universities are trying to develop a kind of template for groups of rare conditions that are similar enough that a CRISPR treatment for one could easily be adapted for others.
We're building a set of recipes and approaches for how to switch from one disease to another and not take 4 years and 10 million to do that.
The approach from one patient to the next would be essentially identical except for the very specific genetic letters that are edited. So each case wouldn't necessarily have to go through a long, expensive approval process at the Food and Drug Administration.
The central idea is that cookbook will have been reviewed by the Food and Drug Administration. And so you can come to them, whether you are at UCLA, Seattle Children, and say, FDA, we have a severely ill child with 4 months to live. Here's the cookbook for how to make the CRISPR on demand. We'd like to use that cookbook. And the goal is for the FDA or any other regulatory agency to say, yes, we understand. Please proceed. That's the goal.
Dr. Peter Marks, who regulates gene editing at the FDA, says it would be like approving a new shaving razor.
CRISPR is very much like a razor blade handle and a razor. Much of CRISPR, the razor blade handle part, is going to be the same over and over again. And so we just need to focus on the razor blade portion, which could be different and yet fit on that same razor.
Urnov has already started editing some of Lucy Landman's cells in his lab to show that CRISPR could help her and other kids with similar mutations. Lucy's mom is hopeful that maybe, someday, that could help her daughter.
And the question is, if we do that at age 3 or age 5 or age 7, can we cure some of the other features of her disease? Does she cognitively improve? Does she learn to speak in that way? That's certainly the hope.
For Lucy and millions of children around the world suffering from very rare genetic disorders. Rob Stein, NPR News.
Support for All Tech Considered comes from C3 AI. C3 Generative AI works to enable rapid access to hallucination-free insights from enterprise systems using any LLM, helping turn the invisible into the obvious. This is Enterprise AI.
President Biden is in Angola for the first and last trip to Africa of his presidency. Some people see this trip as a response to China, whose trade ties and investments in Africa dwarf those of the U.S. But today, Biden visited the National Slavery Museum in the capital, Luanda, to remember the hundreds of thousands of enslaved Africans taken from Angola to the shores of America. NPR's Emmanuel Akinwotu reports.
To fully consider how far our two countries have come in our friendship, we have to remember how we began.
With the Atlantic in the backdrop, President Biden evoked the dark history of the transatlantic slave trade.
We hear them in the wind, the waves. Young women, young men, born free in the highlands in Angola, only to be captured, bound, and forced on a death march.
He talked about the connections between the two countries in front of an audience of officials, diplomats, and the descendants of formerly enslaved people.
Our people lie at the heart of a deep and profound connection that forever binds Africa and the United States together.
Biden's trip to Angola and earlier to Cabo Verde is the first time a US president has visited Africa in almost a decade. His delayed trip fulfills a promise he made to visit the continent, and he vowed to improve ties with African countries. But the timing of the visit comes a matter of weeks before he leaves office, when to many he is at his weakest.
He pledged to really elevate African importance on the global stage, to listen to African leaders when decisions of great importance were being made.
Cameron Hudson is a senior fellow in the Africa program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies.
What we have seen in reality is Africa slipping off of the list of U.S. priorities.
The cornerstone of Biden's visit to Angola is a major U.S.-backed rail project held up by officials as an example of the U.S.'s growing investment in Africa's future.
It's called the Libido Corridor. We're building railroad lines from Angola to the port of Libido in Zambia and the DRC, and ultimately all the way to the Atlantic Ocean and the Indian Ocean.
The 800-mile rail line runs through mineral-rich countries in Central Africa. His trip to the Lobito port tomorrow caps what is likely Biden's final foreign trip in office. Emmanuel Akinwotu, NPR News, Lagos.
And in Houston, it's coming up on 6:29. You've been listening to All Things Considered on your NPR station, News 88.7. Out on the roads, our newest problem is on the Katy, heading out westbound I-10, a wreck at TC Jester and the right lane. Heading in on the Gulf, northbound 45, the wreck at Dixie Farm just cleared. Slow down to Exalt before 2351, and still have the wreck on the Grand Parkway, eastbound after 249 in the left lane.
Today is Giving Tuesday. For one day only, your gift to Houston Public Media is doubled. Don't wait. Join the global movement and double your donation at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Support comes from Signify Business Cash by Wells Fargo. With this business credit card, cardholders can earn rewards on business purchases with no caps or categories to track. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/signify. Terms apply.
Support comes from DeCamera, with concerts by NEA Jazz Master Terry Lynn Carrington, December 6th at Wortham Center, and Telegraph Quartet, December 10th at the Manil Collection. Tickets at decamera.com or 713-524-5050.
Support comes from Christ Church Cathedral, an Episcopal community downtown, celebrating new prayer service weekdays in the chapel and the holidays with lessons and carols, and Christmas services with the Cathedral Choir. More at wewelcomeyou.cc.
Marketplace is supported by Progressive Insurance, offering small business owners protection for what they've worked hard to build with over 30 customizable coverages. Learn more at progressivecommercial.com.
You can't fire me. Well, you know how it goes from there. From American Public Media, this is Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by JLL, a commercial real estate leader helping business sustainability with ROI of up to 175%. JLL.com. JLL. See a brighter way. And by the Peter G. Peterson Foundation, a nonpartisan organization dedicated to raising awareness and accelerating action on America's fiscal challenges to build a brighter economic future for the next generation. Learn more at pgpf.org. And by Revenued, providing working capital for businesses whose cash flow is holding them back. Revenued approves businesses based on revenue, not credit, with funds approved and available in a day. More at getrevenued.com.
In Los Angeles, I'm Kai Riznal. It is Tuesday, today the 3rd of December. Good as always to have you along, everybody. I quit. That's it. I'm done. Not me, to be clear, but more than 3.3 million people in this economy did quit in October, slightly more than the number that left their jobs a month earlier. So we learned in the latest job openings and labor turnover survey, jolts to those in the know, which was out today. Quitting can, of course, be a sign of a healthy economy, people thinking they can easily get another job, so quitting's not that big a deal. But those quits are not distributed evenly. In the American West, for example, the quits rate went up by more than 0.5% in October. In the Northeast, meanwhile, went down. Marketplace's Stephanie Hughes has today's economic geography.
Go straight on. It's a good time to be a transportation planner in Utah, says Laura McClellan.
This programming is sponsored by City Lights, downtown Houston's display of holiday lights and ice skating, sweet treats, and event vendors. Visitors experience the holiday season through 12 different villages spanning downtown. Details and hotel information at visithouston.com.
Definitely, Utah is experiencing so much growth, and it's exciting to be a part of an agency that does look decades out into the future.
McClellan is part of what George Mason economist Christine McDaniel refers to as churn, where a worker leaves one job and moves to another that's a better fit.
You'd like to see a lot of churn in the labor market because it means that, people are getting matched up with the jobs that they can really excel in.
McDaniel says churn happens when there's a lot of quitting, along with a lot of hiring and job openings. This is the case right now in the western U.S., which McDaniel describes as booming. Still, nationally, today's churn isn't the churn of 2021, or even a year ago, when there were higher levels of quits, hires, and openings.
This is sort of a cooling off after the frenzy of the pandemic.
Christina Sargent is an economics professor at Middlebury College. She says this cooling isn't necessarily a bad thing. It helps keep inflation under control, and it's a return to a job market that looks more like it did before the pandemic.
Overall, it's kind of boring, right? We're going back to a normal, and there's not a ton of churn happening. There's not a lot of moving in and out.
Keep left.
But that's okay.
Sometimes you want to change everything up. Sometimes, she says, you want to just do the job that's in front of you. I'm Stephanie Hughes for Marketplace.
With Black Friday and Cyber Monday squarely in the rearview mirror, we are now officially in the holiday shopping season, a lot of which we've been doing online, almost $11 billion worth, says Adobe Analytics. That is a record high. The Census Bureau releases retail sales data for November in a couple of weeks, but in the meanwhile, we have decided, as we often do, to give a few of our retail regulars a call to see how things are looking on the actual ground. First up, Annie Lang-Hartman, owner of the stationery and gift store Wild Letty, which is based in Leelanau County, Michigan.
It honestly was a little bit of a slow start. We had a decent-sized storm come through, so in-person shopping took a while to pick up this weekend, but 2 weeks ago we were down 70% for the month for November compared to last month, and now we are back on track. I think our biggest challenge, which I felt was our biggest challenge this weekend, was dealing with weather affecting our in-store sales. But really, now that we have all of our marketing set up for the rest of the month and our inventory is looking good, I don't think we have any big challenges besides just keeping on top of online orders. And in the next couple weeks, I just hope that we stay busy and stay on top of it, and we're just really hopeful that this is going to be a really great holiday season.
Here's hoping. Annie Lang-Hartman, owner of Wild Letty up in Leelanau County, Michigan. More retailers to come through the program today. On Wall Street this Tuesday, meandering is how you might characterize the major indices. We'll have the details when we do the numbers. Not that it's necessarily any of my business, but if you did some shopping over the weekend, how'd you do it? In person? Online? On social media, perhaps? According to TikTok Shop, that's the platform's in-app marketplace, it did better than $100 million in sales on Black Friday. That is not a huge chunk, of course, of the $10 billion plus in spending on Black Friday in total. But it's a growing piece, considering TikTok Shop launched here just over a year ago. Marketplace's Kristen Schwab has more now on social media's expanding push into e-commerce.
When I open TikTok Shop, the first video that pops up is this.
I am willing to bet my life savings that there will never come a day that I use another cleaning gadget more than my pressurized handheld steam cleaner.
Yes, my TikTok algorithm is very cool, thank you. Really though, this video is your typical influencer fare, except there's a little floating link where you can add the product to your cart and check out directly through TikTok.
It's very home shopping network. It's very QVC. It's just on your phone.
Claire Tassin, a retail analyst at Morning Consult, says brands are trying to meet consumers where they are. And social media platforms, including Instagram and YouTube, want to make buying seamless while taking a cut of the sales.
It's an additional revenue stream for TikTok beyond just the economy of people's attention.
That revenue stream is still kind of small. Social commerce on marketplaces like TikTok Shop make up around 5% of total e-commerce sales in the U.S., says Diana Smith, Associate Director of Retail at Mintel. That's partly because it's newer here. It's been popular in Asia for years. And American shoppers are a little nervous to try it out.
Some consumers may not be exactly sure who they are buying from or if the platform or the brand could be trusted.
But as consumers get more comfortable, social media shopping is expected to grow. Because Oliver Wright, who leads consumer goods and services at Accenture, says shoppers are craving direction.
Consumers consistently cite a high level of uncertainty that they are buying the product that's right fit for them. This sort of engagement helps you cut through a lot of that chaos.
With algorithm-driven recommendations. I'm Kristen Schwab for Marketplace.
Okay, here's a seemingly random statistic. S&P Global says bankruptcies in this economy are on track to hit a 14-year high this year. You got healthcare companies on the Chapter 11 list, you've got communications companies and energy companies, and you've got restaurants. TGI Fridays, Buca de Beppo, Red Lobster, all of them went under this year. And we know restaurants have had to do a lot of adapting the past 3 or 4 years, right? Not just inflation, but the pandemic and worker shortages. And some of those restaurants, as Marketplace's Sabrina Benishore reports, are all adapted out.
It is Martini O'Clock at Union Tavern in Rochester, New York.
Hi, this is Kelly Bush from the Union Tavern, just here shaking up some espresso martinis.
But what has gotten shaken up far more than a martini is Bush's restaurants. There were the shortages.
There's the weird fingerling potato shortages.
There was inflation.
There's been issues with lime and tripling in costs.
And now there's fewer people going out to eat. Restaurant traffic, that's the number of people visiting restaurants at a given time, is down around 3.5% in the U.S. overall, according to BDO. Customers have had to deal with inflation too, in and outside of restaurants.
People's patterns and behaviors have just changed.
But also hanging over many restaurants is their own debt.
People don't always realize the amount of debt we had to take on just to get through the first 2 years of the pandemic.
That is on top of debt taken on to start one of Bush's restaurants just before the pandemic.
The profit margin that was already really slim in the restaurant industry is just getting slimmer and slimmer if it exists at all.
It's the debt that's been the issue for many of the chains that have gone bankrupt this year. Debt that even predates the pandemic, from a time when chains were trying to grow.
Let's find
As
a
they
new
were
route.
growing, they were taking on debt to fuel the growth. A lot of private equity in our space came in.
Greg Thomas is a managing director at financial advisory services firm BDO.
And, when we hit COVID, that debt didn't disappear.
And then, of course, interest rates rose, which made some of that debt more expensive. Meanwhile, for some chains in particular, sales were hurting because their clientele was hurting.
The preponderance of their customers are the lower to middle income, and it's having a major impact on that.
Caution.
During the restaurant boom late in the pandemic, restaurants with financial problems were able to paper over their issues. Now, with the downturn,
they were exposed.
Joe Pollock is a managing principal with restaurant advisory firm Technomic.
And that's why we're starting to see right now a fair amount of these bankruptcies that are coming through.
He expects the parade of Chapter 11s to continue into 2025. Toast, a payment service for restaurants, surveyed its clients and found restaurant optimism varied by size. Kelly Eston is Chief Marketing Officer at Toast.
The largest restaurant groups have the highest increase in optimism, and the smallest ones, they're really dealing with challenges on guest foot traffic over the last year.
The restaurants that are surviving have been nimble. When some of Espartaco Borgia's restaurants in Dallas, Texas had to close during the pandemic, he reinvented them as what he calls smart cafes, fully automated robotic kiosks that store and heat up meals previously prepared at his and other restaurants.
Where people can just come, grab these foods, warm it up and eat it there, or warm it up and take it home, or send an Uber guy.
Borgia says this kind of innovation was super important.
It's essential. Without it, we would be getting out of the hospitality because we just can't find the staff. And to make things worse, real estate is stupid expensive these days.
In Rochester, at Union Tavern, Kelly Bush has also had to transform her business model.
Doing paint nights, doing more wine tastings. We also are in a spooky old tavern from the 1800s. So we did 22 events in October, 18 of them sold out.
But this kind of nonstop adapting is exhausting.
We continue to pivot and pivot and pivot, and I think people are getting tired.
Tired of having to figure this industry out all over again and again. In New York, I'm Sabri Benishore for Marketplace.
Retail regular number 2 today is Philip Rollins, owner of the record, comic, and toy shop Offbeat in downtown Jackson, Mississippi. When last we heard from Mr. Rollins, he was dealing with road construction right in front of his store.
This construction traffic has impacted our business. We're down like 70% on sales. You know, it's really due because, you know, there's no parking in front of the store. People think I'm closed. And gotta make some tough decisions soon, probably by the end of the year. Thankfully, I had a decent, Black Friday. I did a big sale. I had select new records for 40% off. We had a lot of exclusive titles. So there was a Billie Eilish record, a Noah Kahan, a Olivia Rodrigo. We had people line up. I think the earliest person that got there was at 4 a.m. for some reason. And it was cold. It was like, it was in the 30s here. The temperature finally dropped here in Mississippi. So I know he was freezing, but we didn't open till 9 o'clock. So he stayed out there for a good bit. I hope to see the street finished. And I hope to gain more customers. After this week, we're going to be open 7 days a week. But that'll probably last until Christmas. I may take Boxing Day off or make it a half day and be like, all right, cool, we can open up and now I'm rested and full of family. But Boxing Day and Christmas, I'll definitely be off, probably.
Definitely be off, probably. You gotta rest, man. Philip Rollins, the owner of Offbeat, Jackson, Mississippi. Coming up.
In the coming weeks, I'm just hoping to see sales come up.
The retailers lament. But first, let's do the numbers. Dow Industrial's down 76 points today, 0.2%, 44,705. The NASDAQ rose 76 points. That is 0.4% on that particular index, 19,480. The S&P 500 basically flat, 6,049 there. We've been talking to retailers today, small ones. Let's look at the big ones, shall we? Target up 0.6%. Macy's down 2.7% today. Best Buy powered down about 2.1%. Heard from Sabri about restaurant chains going bankrupt. Here's some. Restaurant Brands International, parent company of Burger King and Popeyes, grew 1.6%, not bankrupt to be clear.
Go straight on.
Darden Restaurants, which owns Red Lobster, dropped 0.7% today. Over in South Korea, the won lost about 1% after the days or evenings over their events. You're listening to Marketplace.
The Numbers is supported by Odoo.com, your entire business on one platform. Marketplace is supported by Sendoso, the gifting and direct mail platform designed to help revenue teams double win rates and close deals faster. Learn more at sendoso.com/gift. And by JTV Jewelry Television, offering a variety of jewelry designs including handcrafted artisan designs from Bali, Turkey, Israel, and India. JTV is available on your TV or at jtv.com. And by Progressive Insurance. On the road and at home, customers can simplify their insurance needs and protect what's important by bundling home and auto with Progressive Insurance. Learn more about Progressive and bundling at progressive.com.
And
647, you're listening to your NPR station, News 887.
There's more to the story at HoustonPublicMedia.org. From in-depth coverage of issues affecting all Texans to informing you about the latest breaking news, we prioritize exceptional reporting that's always available on your favorite device. Join us daily for political news that puts substance over sensationalism and community news that shines a light on voices across Houston and beyond. Anytime, anywhere, there's always more to the story at HoustonPublicMedia.org.
Today is Giving Tuesday. For one day only, your gift to Houston Public Media is doubled. Don't wait. Join the global movement and double your donation at HoustonPublicMedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Support comes from Broadway Bank's commercial banking team. Since 1941, committed to helping businesses with their financial needs and growth. More information available at broadway.bank/commercial. Member FDIC.
This is Marketplace. I'm Kai Rista. You think diesel fuel, you think dirty, right? Lots of particulates, all of that. It may be time, though, to adjust your emissions expectations. Renewable diesel is becoming more common, and cleaner products, either renewable or diesel, biodiesel, are almost 10% of the diesel market now. But use of this less carbon-intensive fuel is concentrated in certain specific places. Marketplace's Elizabeth Trovall has more on the wheres and whys
Go straight on.
of the renewable diesel market.
Old cooking oil and animal fat is increasingly fueling big rigs and heavy-duty vehicles.
Renewable diesel is a hydrocarbon biofuel that is chemically similar to petroleum diesel.
Brian Mosier is a chemist with the Agricultural Research Service.
But is made from vegetable oils or animal fats instead of crude petroleum oil.
And trucks run fine on it. That also means there's no need to change transportation infrastructure, says Jeff Short with the American Transportation Research Institute.
You can deploy renewable diesel through existing fuel pumps. I've heard from some carriers who now only get renewable diesel at their terminal in their pumps, and it was no issue. They just dropped that right in.
So it's an easy switch for a smaller carbon footprint, says University of Illinois economist Scott Irwin.
It is a much cleaner fuel from a greenhouse gas perspective. There's just no doubt about that.
What there is doubt about is the future of renewable diesel, which is more expensive than regular diesel to produce.
Renewable diesel is a creature of public policies. So it can live or die depending on how
Go straight on.
Generous those subsidies are.
And that will be up to the Trump administration. But Irwin says state subsidies like those in California are likely to continue. Jimmy Trotterman is with the Energy Information Administration.
So there's been significant growth in California, and that's starting to begin elsewhere on the West Coast.
There's also been modest increases on the East Coast this year. I'm Elizabeth Trovall for Marketplace.
People at Cox Automotive tell us that Americans bought a bit more than 106,000 electric vehicles in October. That's up almost 7% from a year ago, and it keeps EV sales on track for their biggest year ever in this country. More EVs, of course, mean more drivers are looking for places to charge said EVs. And right now, for most of them, that's easiest to do if you live in a home with a garage or a driveway, someplace you can install a home charger. There are more than 45 million households in this country that rent, many of them in multifamily buildings. Being able to charge their apartment complexes would be great, but as Marketplace's Henriette reports, that presents some challenges, both for renters and for apartment developers.
About 2 blocks from his apartment in Burlington, Vermont, Philip Kiefers parked his Chevy Bolt under a utility pole.
12 feet above us on a telephone pole is this black box with a plug sticking out of it.
It looks kind of like a gas nozzle.
And when you turn it on, it comes falling out of the sky.
pulls the plug across the hood of his car to the charging port, plugs it in, and within a few hours, his car should be fully charged. Because he can't charge at the apartment he rents, Kiefer's mapped out all of the public chargers in his neighborhood, like this one, which is owned by the city. He's got options, but they're all at least a few minutes walk from his apartment. But just around the corner from here, tenants of a different apartment complex won't need to leave their building at all on frigid Vermont days. Through the garage door underneath one lake view is a private parking deck with an impressive view of Lake Champlain and the distant Adirondack Mountains, and charging options for EV owners.
Yeah, so we have a couple of Juice Box EV charging stations here.
Building owner Eric Hoekstra says the 2 chargers are available for no extra cost to tenants who pay for a spot in this garage. It's been that way since the building opened in 2019, he says. Since then, demand for charging among his tenants has grown, Hoekstra says, so he's adding chargers to 5 older properties he runs in the area, and compared to building them up front, that's complicated.
You've got to wire it in, and you've got to have pretty robust electrical service. If you're putting stations outside, you might be doing site work and excavating, to put a conduit in the ground and run the power out to a parking lot.
The costs, he says, add up, something that more apartment managers around the country are learning.
The word's getting out to apartment managers that you really want to future-proof your development. It's so much cheaper to do this up front when you're building new construction.
Jeff Allen is executive director of a nonprofit called Fourth, which advocates for electrifying transportation. He says charging is likely going to be an increasingly popular amenity. Last year, the National Multifamily Housing Council found that 34% of tenants want EV chargers in their building. That's 7 percentage points higher than the previous year. But Allen says demand varies a lot by region.
If I'm in San Jose, California, and I manage apartments, I need to be providing charging today. If I'm in Leavenworth, Kansas, and I manage an apartment building, I might have 10 years.
Whatever timeline they're on, apartment owners can tap into incentive programs from utilities, cities, states, and at least for now, the federal government. The Inflation Reduction Act includes a tax credit that developers can use for EV charging in certain circumstances, but that might not last under the next Trump administration, says Ingrid Malmgren with the nonprofit Plug-in America.
I think what we're going to see is we're going to see a shift from efforts at the federal level to efforts at state and municipality levels, county levels, working with partners who are interested in moving this forward. And there are a lot of states who are committed to this,
including Vermont. Funds from the state and the local electric utility are supporting the charging system's property manager Eric Hoekstra is working to install with an eye towards the future.
I won't be surprised if within the next decade or so, something like half of the vehicles out there are going to need access to charging of some type.
Until other developers get on board, he says, he'll have a leg up attracting tenants. In Burlington, Vermont, I'm Henry App for Marketplace.
Rounding out our retail check-ins today, Dylan Demery, owner and co-founder of She's Fly. That's a fly fishing shop for women based in Fort Collins, Colorado.
Right now, business is slowing down a bit, actually. We came off of our season ending right around mid-November, and things slowed down quite a bit. And now it's starting to pick up for the holidays. So we just went through Black Friday, and we had some good movement on our site and had some orders come through, so that's been nice. But we are experiencing a bit of a lull compared to last year. I think we noticed that with social media and email marketing, we've seen a drop in engagement just in the last month and a half. So we're wondering if that's going to pick back up, and we're keeping an eye on that. In the coming weeks, I'm just hoping to see sales come up. We have some community events that we do to keep engaged with our clients and just keep being there for them. It has been our most successful year on record. So I think anything that happens during the holiday season is just going to help us go even further.
Dylan Demery, She's Fly is the shop. It's in Fort Collins, Colorado.
Go straight on.
Marketplace is supported by Drexel University, whose unique model of experiential education allows students to choose their own path and explore the world, enabling them to discover the perfect career. More at drexel.edu. And by the Peter G. Peterson Foundation, a nonpartisan organization dedicated to raising awareness and accelerating action on America's fiscal challenges to build a brighter economic future for the next generation. Learn more at pgpf.org.
Right.
This final note on the way out today, in which the worlds of professional football and prepackaged soups come together. The Washington Commanders, under much longed-for new ownership, announced today they've hired the CEO of the Campbell's Company, which until like a month ago was called Campbell Soup Company, as their new president and CEO. Said the announcement in relevant part,
Turn right.
Mark Klaus, he's the new guy, has a, quote, stellar track record in building brands that connect deeply with consumers and ultimately delivering best-in-class experiences and lasting memories. Just like soup, right? Our digital and on-demand team includes Carrie Barber, Jordan Manji, Dylan Mietinen, Janet Nguyen, Olga Oxman, Ellen Rolfes, Virginia K. Smith, and Tony Wagner. Francesca Levy is the executive director of digital and on-demand. I'm Kai Risdall. We will see you tomorrow, everybody. This is APN.
We're a minute away from 7 o'clock on a Tuesday evening on your NPR station, News 88.7. One last check of the drive home finds a handful of wrecks. Northbound 45, one on the direct connector to 288 and 69. Eastbound I-10, Katy at the West Loop. West Loop 610 northbound at Beach Knot and 99 Grand Parkway eastbound after 249.
Support comes from Carr, Riggs & Ingram, CPAs and Advisors, a top 25 nationally ranked full-service accounting and advisory firm offering tax, audit, accounting, consulting, and advisory services. Learn more at cricpa.com.
59 degrees right now here at the UH campus, and this weather update sponsored by Paul D. Claude, attorney, mediator, arbitrator. Between now and sunrise at 7:02, it'll be mostly cloudy, low around 54, the average 48, and showers likely from midday through the evening tomorrow, and a high of 71. This is your NPR station, KUHF Houston, News 88.7, service of the University of Houston. It's 7 o'clock.
Turn left.
The pardon of his son now gives ammunition to Republicans, including Trump, to say that the justice system doesn't work. It is politicized. Why do they say that? Because now Joe Biden has said that. And I think that's a big, big moment for Joe Biden's legacy.
I'm Michael Barbaro. That's coming up on The Daily from the New York Times.
The Daily is supported by Progressive. Progressive Commercial Insurance offers personalized rates and customizable coverages for your business vehicles. More at progressivecommercial.com. And by the United States Postal Service, offering holiday postage stamps for purchase at more than 40,000 supermarkets, drugstores, office suppliers, and wholesale clubs. Get the story firsthand with The Daily from the New York Times, distributed by American Public Media.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Speer. Another of President-elect Donald Trump's law enforcement nominees is withdrawing from consideration. Chad Chronister, a county sheriff in Florida, says he won't serve as head of the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. Here's NPR's Brian Mann.
Trump tapped Sheriff Chronister to lead a massive drug-fighting organization with field offices and agents around the globe, but the nominee had little experience managing a complex organization like the DEA. Now Chronister has withdrawn from consideration, writing on social media, quote, "As the gravity of this very important responsibility set in, I've concluded that I must respectfully withdraw." As sheriff of Hillsborough County, which includes the city of Tampa, he angered some Floridians by enforcing COVID-era lockdown rules. Trump also saw his first nominee for U.S. Attorney General, Matt Gaetz, step aside after a sex scandal appeared to cost him support among Republican lawmakers. Brian Mann, NPR News, Washington.
President-elect Donald Trump's pick to be FBI director is a loyalist who in the past has also shared Trump's skepticism and at times disdain for the agency and the intelligence community overall. Kash Patel now receiving fresh attention following the announcement he is the president-elect's choice to lead the Bureau. However, Patel is likely to face a protracted and potentially bruising Senate confirmation fight. Among other things, Patel has said the century-old FBI should be radically overhauled. Senate Democrats unanimously re-elected New York Senator Chuck Schumer as the Democratic leader for the new session of Congress in January. NPR's Deidre Walsh reports the top leader noted that there are deep divisions in the country, but says his party wants to find ways to work across the aisle.
Schumer touted bipartisan legislation Democrats crafted in the majority, funding infrastructure projects and boosting the nation's semiconductor industry. He vowed Democrats would remain focused on the same principles in the minority.
Senate Democrats will continue to dedicate every ounce of our strength, focus, and determination to fight and deliver for the American people.
Senate Republicans, meanwhile, gathered to begin planning their policy priorities. President-elect Trump called into the session. GOP leaders discussed pushing through bills on border security, energy, and tax cuts, using a procedure that allows passage with a simple majority, without needing any Democratic votes. Deirdre Walsh, NPR News, the Capitol.
Even as crews continue to work to clean up all the snow that has fallen on the Great Lakes region in recent days, more snow may be on the way. After several feet of snow fell in some spots over the weekend, forecasters now say they expect several more inches of snow could fall this week. Many school districts in western Pennsylvania remain closed today. Storms are finally showing signs of slowing. Lake effect snow also hit parts of western New York, Ohio, and Michigan. A mixed close on Wall Street today. The Dow was down 76 points. The S&P 500 closed up 2 points. The Nasdaq was up 76 points. This is NPR. Many schools across the country have recovered to a large degree from the COVID-19 pandemic, but some are still struggling, especially those who serve Native American and Alaska Native students. Disparity existed before the pandemic, but has grown since then. Looking at 34 states that track the numbers, half at absentee rates for Native students that were at least 9 percentage points above the state average. Nigeria has started rolling out a new malaria vaccine. It's a major step for the West African country that's hard hit by the mosquito-borne disease. NPR's Gabriella Emanuel reports.
Nigeria is Africa's most populous country, and it has the world's highest malaria burden. Last year, nearly 200,000 people in Nigeria died from malaria. That's more than 30% of malaria deaths worldwide. This vaccine is initially being rolled out in 2 Nigerian states that have some of the worst malaria numbers. The vaccine requires 4 doses and will be given to children under 1. Next year, the plan is to vaccinate children in the rest of Nigeria. Gabriella Emanuel, NPR News.
More delays for Alaska Airlines, which says unspecified technology problem caused the temporary grounding of flights in Seattle and continued trouble for people trying to book flights online. In a statement today, the company says it requested a 40-minute ground stop at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport to try to clear up the congestion resulting from the problem. In September, Alaska Airlines flights were grounded in Seattle because of what the company called significant disruptions due to technology troubles. I'm Jack Speer, NPR News in Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Skoll Foundation, dedicated to powering social innovators to transform the world. Learn more at skoll.org. And the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation at rwjf.org.
From the New York Times, I'm Michael Barbaro. This is The Daily. Today, why President Biden went back on his word to pardon his own son, and where that decision leaves the U.S. system of justice. Chief White House correspondent Peter Baker is our guest. It's Tuesday, December 3rd.
we are reaching you in, of all places, Angola, where you are traveling with President Biden. It's pretty late there for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, Air Force One just landed here in Luanda, the capital, and he got off the plane for the start of a couple-day visit here. Didn't talk with the reporters on the plane or those on the ground about anything going on back home. But obviously, that's top of mind for a lot of people. And I think it's one of these foreign trips that will be shadowed now by a domestic issue that he dealt with literally just hours before getting on the plane, his decision to pardon his son, Hunter Biden.
Well, Peter, I wonder if you can describe your reaction to that announcement as chief White House reporter and as a really historically minded kind of thinker about the presidency.
Well, it's a big deal for a president to use his power of clemency to protect his own son from the justice system, right? This is something that hasn't happened before. There have been a couple of occasions where presidents used the power of the pardon or commutation to help people who are close to them, even members of the family. Bill Clinton pardoned his brother Roger, who had had old drug charges, and President Donald Trump pardoned Jared Kushner's father from old tax evasion charges. But this is the first time we've seen a president use the power for his own son and to head off any punishment for that member of the family. Those both the previous examples came after their sentences had been served and were basically meant as statements of forgiveness, not preventing accountability. In this case, President Biden is actually interceding before his son is even sentenced, saying, no way I'm letting him go to prison. And so in that moment, with the stroke of a pen, he has done something extraordinary by upending the judicial system that he has spent his career, and particularly the last 4 years, defending. And the pardon of his son now gives ammunition to Republicans, including Trump, to say that the justice system doesn't work. It is politicized. Why did they say that? Because now Joe Biden has said that. And I think that's a big, big moment for Joe Biden's legacy.
We're going to return, Peter, to the implications of all of this, the meaning of it, and how it's going to fit into Biden's legacy. But I wonder if we can start with how Biden got to this place. Because pardoning his son, Hunter, fully and unconditionally is something that Biden said repeatedly that he would never, ever do. And I want to talk with you about why he said he would never do it and what you've come to understand about why Biden ultimately changed his mind.
Right, exactly. Well, Biden, of course, campaigns for office and comes to office after the 2020 election by accusing President Trump of politicizing the Justice Department, of making decisions about law enforcement subject to his political will, going after his enemies and favoring his friends. And he said he wasn't going to do that. He was going to restore the system of justice. But when he comes to office, he understands that his own son is already being investigated by a U.S. attorney in Delaware on a number of possible issues. And that U.S. attorney has been made into a special counsel, which is meant to insulate that prosecution from politics. And Biden makes a decision from the beginning. He's going to keep that special counsel, or at least not going to do anything to stop that special counsel from continuing. And then Merrick Garland, as Attorney General, makes the decision to keep that same special counsel in place to demonstrate that they're not trying to influence this in any way, that the special prosecutor should have the right to pursue the facts as he chooses. So Biden was taking a hands-off approach. That's what he said. He was going to take a hands-off approach.
Right, and in that sense, he's really putting his money where his mouth was during this period, because he's saying to the world, you know, you certainly could understand why I might want to intercede on behalf of my son, but I refuse on principle.
Exactly. He makes it a point of principle. He makes it a point of contrast with his predecessor and now successor, Donald Trump. And he uses this, in fact, to make the case that the Justice Department is, in fact, neutral and making politics-free decisions when they go after Trump. Because his point is, hey, the Justice Department that is prosecuting Trump is also prosecuting my son. And I'm not having anything to do with either one of those things. This is just based on facts and law. That was the argument he was making.
Right, because to cast doubt on one of those investigations was to potentially cast doubt on all of them, which is why he's going to withhold judgment, steer clear of all this stuff.
Exactly.
But eventually, the official legal proceedings intensify, and Hunter Biden is charged and brought to trial.
And he's found guilty by a jury of his peers of lying on a firearms application form. And then in a separate trial, he pleads guilty to tax evasion. And so Hunter faces a sentence that could last up to 25 years in one case. Though as a first-time offender, he would likely expect a shorter sentence, possibly even just parole.
As we sit here in Normandy, your son Hunter is on trial, and I know that you cannot speak.
We reporters are asking President Biden the obvious question.
Will you accept the jury's outcome, their verdict, no matter what it is?
Yes.
And have you ruled out a pardon for your son?
Yes.
You have.
Are you going to pardon your son? And he tells us no.
Second one, would the president pardon or commute his son if he's convicted?
So I've answered this question before. It was asked of me not to.
And his press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, says it again and again.
We've been asked that question multiple times. Our answer stands, which is no.
That question's been answered. Our answer is still the same. No, he will not intervene.
It's still a no. It will be a no. It is a no. And I don't have anything else to add. Will he pardon his son? No.
And this is the part where I would normally ask you what changed specifically, but I think we can intuit that a big thing that changed was that Donald Trump won the presidency. Is that ultimately what seems to tip the scales here from the emphatic no's and the principled position of I will not muddy the system to I'm going to pardon my son?
Yeah, I think obviously the only thing that's changed between June when he begins saying that and today, December, when he gives this pardon, is the election. And you can look at it a couple of different ways. You can look at it in a way of him not being honest in the summer, that he really was, in fact, considering this, but didn't want to say before an election because it would be politically damaging. And only after the election does he admit that, in fact, he is going to use this extraordinary power for his son. Or, and this may be an and/or, you can also look at it as waking up to the reality of a Trump-run Justice Department in which this new president is promising retribution and specifically to go after Hunter Biden. And a president who's on the way out thinking, I'm not going to let that happen. I'm not only going to pardon him for this tax and gun charges, I'm going to protect him from the next guy who's making very clear he's going to use the FBI for retribution. And why would he think that? Well, he has only to look at who Trump has been naming to run the nation's law enforcement agencies. Pam Bondi, a former Florida Attorney General, he will nominate for Attorney General. And Kash Patel, a former aide to him, will be, if confirmed by the Senate, the FBI director. Both of them are known as sharply partisan warriors who have subscribed to Trump's conspiracy theories, his election lies, and his taste for retribution against his enemies. And so you can tell Biden is protecting his son from Trump by the way he words it in the pardon. The pardon just says...
We'll talk about that. Talk about the way the pardon is articulated, the ground it covers, and what that reveals.
The pardon is rather extraordinary because it doesn't just say that we absolve Hunter Biden of the convictions for which he has already been found, but we absolve him of any crimes he may have committed on any kind of topic for 10 years, starting in 2014 until 2024. We haven't seen a pardon like that, as sweeping as that, in decades, probably not since Watergate. And what it says is, in effect, that no matter what Trump and his Republican allies may come up with about Hunter, they can't prosecute him for that. And it's really a way of insulating Hunter, not